Okay, now that Sprout and Sapling students know the topic of their creative thinking project, it's time for them to brainstorm. And there's really two parts to the brainstorming process. First, we need students to think about their own individual ideas. After they have some individual ideas, we need to expand those ideas using the thinking tool that we learned about in the last video. Now, something to remember, the teacher's guide comes in handy, especially during the Let's Brainstorm section. So I have a copy of that in front of me, and I'm going to use that to help walk you through these steps. So the first thing that you want to do is to talk about the instructions. So because this is so long, I would go ahead, have a student read one sentence, and then break that down with students. So a student would read, "Draw your 3 main fossils and give a brief description about them." So I would ask the question, how many fossils will we draw? And they're going to tell me 3. And then I'll simply point out that we will give a brief description of the fossils after. And then you would continue with this process through the rest of the instructions. So to fully cover the instructions, I would recommend spending no more than 2 minutes on this. After you've covered the instructions, the next part is to get students to pick 3 items that we use today that will be fossils in the year 4012. So this will be difficult for students. So one way to help them would be to make a list using the Blackboard function. So students can pick from this or have a better idea of what are options. So I'm going to go ahead and give them the first example. So I would say people in 4012 probably will think that the cell phone is a fossil. Then students can give me their own ideas. So maybe they would say TV, and maybe another one would tell me a video game. And we can get many different examples with students. So keep the list going. After that, you would return to this page, and you want to give instructions and time for students to draw their ideas. So one way that I found to give clear instructions is to show them an example. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture of a cell phone. All right, so I've drawn my cell phone. Whew, you might have to use your imagination for that one. But anyways, students have an idea of what I want them to do, and I would go ahead and give them some time to draw 3 of their own items that they choose. So for that, both brainstorming with them as well as giving them time, I would recommend that that would take about 4 to 5 minutes. So give them that time, and then after you finish, you would move on to this next section here. So now we need students to fill out a description based on the items they've chosen, and this is in regards to what people in 4012 would call these items that they picked. So I first will continue with my example of the cell phone to help students understand. So I'll ask questions like, okay, what do you think the citizens of 4012 would call this cell phone? And let's say, for example, a student tells me that they will call it the black box. So I'll go ahead and write that in. Next, I would ask them, okay, what country do you think they found it in? And maybe a student will tell me the Americas. So I go ahead and write that in. And here I would ask them, what do you think that 4012 people think that we used it for? And maybe they'll say something like, to make fire when it's cold. Oops. So now that we have our ideas filled out and students have a good idea of what to do, we can then give them time to write a description for the 3 items that they have chosen. And so in order to brainstorm these ideas with students, as well as give them time, I would estimate that you should leave for that 6 to 7 minutes. After you've done that, you can then move on to the next part. And this is where we get students to apply the thinking tool to their own individual ideas. So first thing we want to do is to read the directions. You are going to be having your grand opening of your museum. Brainstorm the details. So ask students the question of, what are we going to be having? And they can tell you the grand opening of the museum. And at this point, we can answer these questions in correlation to our topic. So we can ask students, okay, so who will come to this grand opening? And maybe students will tell you people from Happy Town. So go ahead and write that. People from Happy Town. Oops. Let's fix that there. That's an A. Okay. And maybe somebody else will say people from April City. And you can get one or two more examples. Next, you can ask them, okay, so what are we going to be opening? And they can just respond with our museum. So write that in. Students can copy from you. And then you would continue asking these W and 1H questions. Then once students have filled out all the information, they can then move on to the next part of the thinking project. And in regards to time for this page, I would estimate it would take between 6 to 7 minutes for you to brainstorm with them, as well as getting them to write the rest of their ideas. And again, this is all done with you brainstorming with students. And that's the end of the brainstorming portion.